Microsoft Word 2007, Referencing and Indexing. Now, anytime you find yourself faced with a document that's more than 1 or 2 pages long, let's say it's hundreds of pages long, how do you manipulate and navigate through that? Well, one of the things we can do is reference and index things, so we can use things like tables of contents, the index to tell us which page number something is on. So we're going to start scratching the surface on how to deal with these large documents in this first nugget. There's quite a bit to referencing and indexing. In this first nugget, we're going to take a look at table of contents, table of figures, how we do indexing, and even how to use cross-referencing if you want to take one subject and kind of index it over to something else. Like I said in the introduction to this nugget, anytime you have a long document, you want to make it easy for people, whether it's online or whether it's in printed form, to navigate around your huge document. So, in my case, mine's not super huge. I only have 9 pages here. But I do have the history of instruments. And let's say you've got some big report or some other document. We're going to probably have headings and subheadings. You know, in this case, I went ahead and preloaded my history of instruments. The last time you saw this in the other nugget, it was just a lot of text. Well, now I've added some headings like ancient history, and notice I use my styles here to make that a heading 1. And then I've got the Persian and Greeks, which is a heading 2. And then if I scroll down a little bit more under the Middle Ages here, keep scrolling. Here we go. Here's a heading 3. So if I scroll down here, see there's my heading 3. So I've added these kind of points to my document. And let me scroll here to the top here. And what you're going to want to do to really help these people navigate to specific sections, you can put in a table of contents. Now, if you print the document, what's going to happen is it's going to tell you what page number these particular headings or topics are. If it's online or in electronic format, that's even better. That means you can actually link to these headings and subheadings, and so that way people that are looking at it can actually jump directly to wherever that is into this huge document that you have. That's pretty cool. So what you want to do is go ahead and utilize what Word 2007 has already built in, and that is using headings. Heading 3s, 2s, 1s, that paragraph style that you're utilizing. That's built in. Now you can manually go in and use your own placeholders. I got to tell you something. That's a real big pain. But there are certain people in certain type of documents that want to do that. Now, where do we do all this? Chris, you've been talking about this table of contents. How do we do this? Well, if you look up here on our ribbon, we have a tab called References. If I click on that, here's where we're going to spend all of this video talking about all of these indexing and the tables and the things that we can use. Here we can see the very first one is a table of contents. So, all you need to do is click on the down arrow, and it's going to say automatically, do you want to use one of our automatically built tables that use the contents? It'll give you that with the heading. Or do you want to use it where it says table of contents? And so now it's labeled this way, and it's using the heading styles. And either one of these, by the way, can be obviously used, and you can obviously manipulate it if you want by using the insert table of contents. And then here's the manual table. Now, if you do a manual, you're going to have to actually say, okay, well, what am I using for my level 1, my level 2, and level 3 and chapter titles? What am I going to do? This you have to create by yourself. Just understand, it's available. We're not going to get into it in this nugget, but it is available to you if you want to change something. I typically just use the automatic capabilities. Now, if we click on Insert Table of Contents, it'll allow you to manipulate it just a little bit. Now, notice it grays out because we're in the Table of Contents area. The index, table of figures, and table of authorities. Those are all over, here in the background. We'll take a look at those in a minute. So we come in here, and you got your print preview, and it says, okay, what's going to happen is it's going to do a heading 1, or in this case, Word 2007 has already seen that I have a title and headings and other things like that. It says, all right, how do you want this to work? You got your heading 1, and then the page number, and then you can go down here and say, well, do you want to show the page numbers? I can turn them off. If you're not using this or in a print version. By the way, if you use print, make sure you use the page numbers. Or if I want, I can show the page numbers, but I don't want to right align them. Instead, I want them to bump right up against the actual headings themselves. So I can take that off, and you notice heading 1 is now this page title. Here's your page. 2 is here's your page. So the page numbers, you wouldn't see heading 2, heading 3. It would say, Persian Greeks 3, Muslim 5, something like that. But I usually say, no, write a line. It's easier, it draws your eyes, and it's actually a lot cleaner on your document. Then the tab leader, we saw this in our nugget on tabs, is just that leader information that splits the difference between the end of your text and the beginning of the end of the tab stop here. And I can change those by simply clicking down here. Maybe I want to do an underline. Or you can also come down here under the general settings and say, well, with the formats, do you want to just use from the template, which means you're using, this kind of look, or I can choose from some of the neat little ways that we have pre-built, like classic. Oh, that looks kind of neat. And I can go to fancy. Ooh. Or I can get modern. And this just changes the way that it's presented on your page in your table of contents. Now you can also show levels. If I don't want to show, let's say I've got heading levels down to 6 or 8. Well, you don't want your table of contents to go down that much. We only want to show the first 3 levels, the 4th levels, or maybe 2 levels. You can do that. So if I notice when I take the show levels 3, when I remove that and I go down to 2, it says, oh, no, you just remove that, and so now you don't see it. But if I go up to level 3, it's like, yeah, I'll show you heading 3. It's right there. Okay, so we can do that. Now I like distinctive is one of my favorites, and so I'm going to use that. And again, you can see if I drop off any one of those, it's going to move that and say, nope, you're not going to show those page numbers. We'll use the tab leaders. It all looks good. By the way, if you take this web document or make it a web document like in front page or on your SharePoint sites, you can actually, it'll just create these into hyperlinks, and it'll just say, do you want to use hyperlinks instead of page numbers? So when you translate that online, this will obviously take you to a different HTML page of that document versus just having it scroll, or you can have it scroll all on one page. All abilities that you can use if you're going to use it on the web. Options, if we click on options, this just says, all right, do you want to build your table of contents from your existing styles? So right now we got balloon text, we got heading 4, we got all these things. It says heading 1 will be table of content level 1, which means it's all the way up to the left right here. Heading 2 will be TOC level 2. Now heading 3 is going to be on 3, but if I want, I can move it, and I can say, well, let's go move it over to TOC level 4, which means it's going to bump instead of heading 1 here, heading 2 here, where my mouse is, and heading 3 here, heading 3 would be over here somewhere. So you can do that. You can also do the table entry fields, which allows you to see these in a table format. Again, nothing you really need to worry about. Outline levels, again, this is whether you want to use the table of content level in an outline format or not. In this case, we say yes. Okay, so we can do that. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now notice it now moves heading 3 over a little bit more. So now you're moved all the way over to this side. So now we go, all right, sounds good. We've got our table of contents. If you notice my cursor, I placed it at the beginning here. So that's where it's going to insert it. I click OK, and bada bing, bada boom. Here we go. History of instruments, ancient history, Persians and Greeks, Japanese, Chinese cultures, and the following page numbers. Now, you'll notice something, though. All it did was insert it onto page 1 here and then push everything back. Well, that's typically not the way you want it to show up. So what I'm going to do is right here at the beginning of the history of instruments, we saw this when we did page formatting, I'm going to hit a Control-Enter, which is going to give me a manual page break. Remember that hard page break we talked about in the page formatting nugget? So I hit Control, I hit Enter, and boom, there we go. So now it's on page 2. But here's the problem. If you scroll up here, it still says the history of instruments is on page 1. I'm sorry, that's not true. Well, how do I do this? I update my table of contents. Now, when I click on this, it's going to ask me an interesting question. Do I want to update the page numbers only or update the entire table? Well, what does this mean? Well, update the page numbers means only the existing headings will get their page numbers updated. So if I go ahead and click OK, boom, there it went. 2, and now it's on page 2, and it goes all the way down to Modern Times is on page 6. Now here's where it gets interesting. Notice it only did the page numbers. It didn't do anything here. Where would that make a difference? Well, let's say we go down to Modern Era here. So I'm going to scroll down a lot down here. Here's Modern Times. And let's say that we want to break this up a little bit, and I'm going to come down here and say Modern Times, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter here. And I'm going to insert, I'm going to go back up here to Home and change my style. I'm going to insert a heading 2, so I click on that, and I'm going to type in the Big Band Era. Okay, so Big Band Era, when I was in music classes and played instruments. Love the big band era. So now we're going to say big band era. That's a heading 2. And then down here, we're going to start talking about some of these big band era people, maybe some of the famous instrumentalists and conductors of the big band. So I go ahead and hit enter. And of course, that means I'm going to move down here to a heading 3, or I can just go ahead and type the person's name, like Glenn Miller, famous trombone player. He actually died in World War II, but one of the best, one of the big, everyone knows Glenn Miller's name in big band. So I can, of course, highlight this and come up here and say I'm going to make that a heading 3. So there's Glenn Miller, right? And let's say we add another one. My favorite all-time is Benny Goodman. Benny Goodman was a clarinet player, and part of the reason why I started playing the clarinet back in my band days. So there we go, heading 3. Okay, so now I've added 2 heading 3s, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, and the big band era. So there's a heading 2. Now if I scroll all the way up here to the top, look at this. Nothing's changed. So if I come over here now to my references, and I want to update my table, and I update page numbers only, all it's going to do is update the page numbers. But now, instead, if I click Update Entire Table, watch this. OK, and now you say, Chris, I don't see anything. Well, I got to scroll down. Here we go. Modern Times, Big Band Eras on page 6, Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman. Now, so far, you're thinking, wow, that's okay, that's kind of cool. We got the table of contents. But you notice anytime I roll my mouse over here, what does this allow me to do? Well, let's say I want to go to the Muslim influence of the Middle Ages. So I take my mouse and I roll over it, and it says, in my current document, hit Control and click to follow the link. Control changes my hand a little to a pointer. I click, boom, jumps me down right to Muslim influence. Pretty sweet, isn't that? So if I want to find certain places, I can just do that in the table of contents. So now let's say I want to go to the Renaissance, to the Masters. Control, click, boom, now I'm down on the Masters. So there is my table of contents. And this allows me, of course, to come in here and maneuver, and if it was printed out, if I scroll all the way up, it would tell me what page number on the printout I would go to see ancient history for Persians and Greeks, or Japanese and Chinese cultures. So we can do that. Now, the next thing I can do, of course, is obviously if I want to, I can hit enter here, and then up here I can add maybe this and just say, well, now I want to add some standard text here. So if I go just normal text, I can say this is my table of contents. Doesn't affect anything. Now we can go ahead and add a table of figures. So the table of contents is set up on my heading, but remember, if I scroll all the way down here, you'll notice that I've added a couple of figures down here. Now, in order for the table of figures to, work, I need to describe these as figures. So this needs to be captioned as a figure, and so does this. By the way, this is Antonio Stradivari, the creator of the Stradivarius violins and the cellos. And then down here are what are known as sackbuts. Yes, I know. What an interesting term right there, right? Well, these are obviously, if you look at them very carefully, these are the grandfathers of the modern-day trombone. Okay, let's start off with selecting right here my picture tools. Now, if I need to, I can come over here to the format, and I can add my shapes and do the things that I want to do. But to make this add a caption, I go to References, and then over here where it says Insert Caption, I'm going to add a picture like a figure or, whatever I want to do. So I go ahead and we insert the caption. Now, right now it says, well, what is the label for this? In this case, it's going to say this is a figure. Now, I can change this to a table. Maybe I have a table, and I can do a table of contents for the tables and the figures, and even equations. I can do that, but we'll stick with figure. And you can choose on, well, do you want this below the selected item, or do you want to create an even new label other than a figure, a caption, or anything else? You can do that. In this case, it's going to say the caption is going to be Figure 1. I can exclude the label from the caption, which means if I select this, it'll then just say 1, and then that way it'll just be number 1, and that's it. Or you can say, well, no, that's fine. Figure 1, we'll put that there. And so we're going to go ahead and put this as a caption, Figure 1. Now I can go ahead and insert the thing, and we can say this is Antonio Stradivari. So we can do that. I think I spelled his name correctly. And then we can go ahead and click OK. Now the numbering, if I click on numbering, that just says what type of format do you want. Do you want it 1, 2, and 3, or do you want it ABC, Roman numerals? How do you want to do that? And you can even include the chapter number. If you're doing chapters, it'll say, well, the heading for this is a heading 1 type, then you use a hyphen, and then it'll put the figure 2. So it'll say the name of the chapter plus the figure. I don't necessarily need to do that, so I'll click OK. We click OK, and boom, there it is. Figure 1, Antonio Stradivari. So that's figure 1. I come down to here. We click on this picture. We want to insert another caption. Notice it says this is, must be figure 2 because I'm looking at your document here in Word 2007, and I know you already have a figure 1. So that's kind of fun that we can do that. So figure 2, we're going to say these are sack butts. By the way, that's the name. I know it's interesting. Back in the Old English, they had such interesting names. So this is a soprano, alto, tenor, and a bass sack butt. Those are the things that we have. Stay with the figure. We say OK. I click OK, and now I've got these figures that are in place. Here's figure 2. Here's figure 1. So now when I come back and scroll all the way back up to the top here, and let's say I want to input up here a table of figures, so I can put table of figures, and we go here, home, click on here, and we say that the table of figures is going to be next. It's going to be inputted right after this. I then come over here to references, and now you'll notice, where's the table of figures? It's not on table of contents. You'd think so. There's no little thing. It's not a footnote. It's not a citation. Believe it or not, remember, we're dealing with captions, right? It's right here. Table of figures dialog. Now, it's kind of hidden, so aren't you glad you took this CBT nugget? So we click on it, and look at that. Now, it's interesting that it used to be, in the older versions of Office, all of these were available, and then you could just select in between them, but you would do insert indexes and tables, and so they would do that. Now it's going to say, how do you want to do your table of figures? I think we all understand, fairly simple, just like we saw with the table of contents. Here's the print preview. Do you want to show the page numbers? Turn them off. You can do that. Right align them. No. You can do that. Do you want tab leaders? You can change the tab leaders to anything that you want. The formats, the caption label is a figure, which we've done that. Remember, we just saw that. We can change these even here if we want. Now I'm going to go ahead and say, if I remember right, I think we did distinctive, so we'll follow that format. Distinctive caption labels, woohoo, we're all good. The options are the same. Do you want to build the tables from the balloon text or the styles? How do you want to do it? Table identifiers, these are all things that you can change from this. F, meaning the figure, for the table entry fields if you want to do that. Okay, so we click OK. Those are the options. We click OK, and boom, there it is. Figure 1, figure 2, it puts the text, it adds the name right here for the table of figures, and just like I could with my table of contents, if I hover my mouse over here, hit the control, and click, I'm instantly taken to figure 1, Antonio Stradivari. So table of figures, just like the table of contents, allows us to navigate quickly if we're in an online electronic format, or if you're in a printed format. If you scroll back up here, it tells you that this is on page 5, right? Page 5 of 10. If I scroll up here to my tables, table of figures, sure enough, there we go. We are on page 5. So that's what these table of contents and the table of figures do for us. Now, table of contents and table of figures are big idea type of things. Like this is obviously maybe a chapter heading, and this is subchapter. But what if you want to find particular pieces of information that are located within this huge document, and you don't want to have to read through it. I mean, I think I know where certain things are in the Middle Ages, and you go there. That's what an index is all about. Specific concepts, terms that you might not be able to find just looking at a table of contents. So what we usually do is we put the index at the end of the document, right? You'll go and you'll scroll all the way down here to the back, and at the end of the document, you'll find the index. Now, in order for you to do this, Word will help you out, but what you have to do is you have to tell Word 2007 what words, phrases, whatever it is that you highlight and you identify and tag with these index entry fields, you will then, Word will basically, once you've done that, Word will then go and build an alphabetical list at the end along with the page numbers or page number ranges that they are included in it. Pretty cool, isn't it? So let's show you how this all works let's go up into our document here, and we'll find a good place here. We'll go into the Roman Catholic Church area here and their, quote, influence on the history of instruments. So let's say that we want to find anything that has to do with the word nullum. And this is perhaps, in this case, obviously, I use the lorem ipsum generator, the Latin generator, so this text doesn't mean a lot. But what I can do is I can select and highlight a word or a phrase, and then what I can do up here is mark an entry. Notice that. Now notice it also, if I click on it, it allows it and it'll automatically say, oh, you've selected nullum. So the main entry is nullum. Now check this out. I can also, if you notice when you scroll over it, it tells you a little secret shortcut, Alt-Shift-X. So I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-X and boom, there it is, mark index entry. Now a main entry is going to be something like a overall thing. So if I said like the main entry would be something like on a craftsman, well then underneath craftsman might be brass craftsman, woodwind craftsman, and you can break them down as sub-entries, and then those will appear underneath the main entry. That's what a sub-entry would allow you to do. Now, once you've gone ahead and said, well, this is going to be the index, the main entry is going to be under the word nullum, and then we're going to say, well, the options can be this. We can do a cross-reference, which we'll see in just a minute. You can put down the current page that you're on. You can also do a page range. Now, page range is really good. Let's say that you're going to find that in one section, nullum is mentioned 20 times in 2 pages. Well, obviously, you don't want that to be just, those 2 pages. Or maybe over 20 pages, nullum in a row is going to be mentioned. Well, then you're not going to want to put pages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 all the way up to page 20. You can do a page range where it'll say page 10 through 20 is where you're going to find all of that talking about nullum and whatever that is. Now you can of course change the page number format. You can say, well, I like the page number to be bold. I can even make it italic. This deals with your index and how it shows up later on. By the way, you can change this once you create that index. You can make some changes to that. So we'll say page number format, we'll go with bold. Now here's where it gets really cool. Down here I can go ahead and mark this one single word, but let's say I want every single place in this document where the word nullum is used, so that way people can find it. Now in this case, the lorem ipsum generator obviously repeats it a few times, so I'm going to go ahead and click Mark All, so that way I'm going to choose all of the things that say nullum. Now watch what happens. So I go ahead and click Mark All. Instantaneously, it turns on the Show Hide feature, and look at this next to the word nullum. I'll move this over a little bit so you can see this. It's inserted this reference tag, this index entry. So this can be, and by the way, this can be for a word or a phrase or anything, and it tags it, and it says this has been selected. Nullum is going to be an index entry and XE index entry, and the page number will show up as bold. See the little /B here? Now, of course, if I come over here and go to the home and I turn off the markings, that's hidden text. That doesn't show up. It won't be printed, and you won't see it unless, of course, you turn on the show hide markings and for your format markings so that we can see that. Now, the neat thing is remember I said nullum is probably in here a couple of times. So if I continue to scroll down, look at this. Here it is right on the same page. Here's another nullum. And I keep scrolling down, and I'm going to find whenever it repeats itself, you are going to find that it's going to add that particular thing. Here's another one, nullum, right there. So it's obviously in several pages throughout this one. Okay, so we've marked one of them. That's our entry. Notice the Mark Index Entry dialog box stays up. So that way you don't have to keep going back over here to References and click Mark Entry, Mark Entry, Mark Entry every single time. So what's some of the other things that we want to mark? Okay, well, let's just pick up a few other things. So we've got the nullum right there. And let's say we want to say anytime, let's show a phrase. So first off, I'm going to turn off the show hide here so I can grab something and not have to worry about what I'm doing. And this sounds cool. Anytime it says myacinus cursus, okay, so I select that. Now when I click over here, watch what happens. It says, okay, you want that entire thing as part of that. Okay, sounds good. Current page, bold, and we'll go ahead and just mark. We'll mark all on that one too. Sounds good. Now I come in, and it's going to go down and find all the places that's set up. And let's see, lorem ipsum is used a lot. Now let's say we choose lorem ipsum, and again, I just turn that off so that way I can see the things that I want to get without picking up any unnecessary text. I mean, if you do have it on, I mean, that's fine, and that'll work for you, but you just have to kind of be careful. Now lorem ipsum has now disappeared over here, so I'm going to go ahead and grab lorem ipsum and click here. All right, sounds good. We're going to mark all of these, and then watch this. I'm going to come over here and hide this. I want to make now the aliquum a subentry. So now aliquum, I can come over here and then click over here. I can actually say the main entry is lorem ipsum, and the subentry is now aliquum. And I'm going to use the current page. So we'll go ahead and mark this particular one, and so it's set up. Now watch this. Remember how I said I marked it? It says lorem ipsum, and then it puts a little colon there, and then aliquum, and then bolds a number. So this entry has now changed to reflect that. Okay, so now we've done all our indexes. We've done some markings, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close this, turn off this, and now we're going to go down to the end of my particular pages, now all the way down here to page 10. Hit enter a couple of times, and now what I want to do is create this index. So we go up here to references. Now we're not working with captions, we're working with the index. Mark entry, here it is. Create the insert or insert an index. So I go ahead and click on it, and it's going to ask me something. Okay, how do you want it to show up? Do you want to right align the page numbers, kind of like what we did before? We can turn that on and put the header, and this is the same. You can also say, well, do you want it indented? Do you want it run in? How many columns do you want? Columns, you can do 2 or you can do 3. We'll go ahead and stick with 2, and you're going to see both of them. You can also turn on the mark entry and go back and make some other. You can have it do auto mark, which is kind of fun, and even modify. So if you click on the modification, you can say, well, what's the style? Do you want index 1 with the preview? You can use Times New Roman. It tells you all the different ways that you can use that. You can even modify this by selecting the index and the style for index 1, what font you're using. So you have a lot of flexibility. Remember, I told you can change that if you didn't like the bold, and if you didn't like this, you can do all kinds of really neat things. Okay, so this is a little bit beyond the scope of this nugget, but I just want to show you where you can go to make changes for that. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of that. We'll go ahead and we say we want our index. I click OK, and boom, there it is. So now we can see lorem ipsum on which pages it is. We can then see what a main entry lorem ipsum is, and then underneath we could then outline a list of all the different things, aliquum and sed non and the class aptent and anything like that. Notice it's also in alphabetical order, down the columns, L, M, N. Now, you might think, Chris, did you plan that it was right in alphabet? No, I didn't actually, just randomly, right there. Notice we only selected the 1 for myacinus cursus. We only said we wanted to mark that 1. We didn't mark every single page. Nullum, though, we see it on all these different pages, lorem ipsum. And so each one of these things is now indexed, that we can, of course, if you look at this and we select it, notice it's now like our table index, so it tells us which pages everything is on, and all the things that we can do there. And of course, if we say we want to take this and do a hard page break here, we'll do a Control Enter, and then right here at the I can say that this is going to be actually an index. Now watch this. Now notice this is the index, right? Now if I go up here and I select over here, and under my references, and I update my table and update my entire table, now what's going to happen? Sure enough, now the index is marked, and so if I need to, I can hit Control Enter, and I can jump right to my index. Pretty neat. And so this is how we can use all of our indexing for putting in the different pages and showing where all of these particular items are. And then, of course, our table of contents, which allow us to go there and say, wow, okay, now we know exactly where to navigate within our document. One last thing to show you here, of course, is if I want to do cross-referencing. Well, what's cross-referencing do for me? Well, a lot of times you might have certain things that are, not really, in there. Someone might say, well, I want to find out about lorem dipsum instead of lorem ipsum. Well, it's the same thing. So you could put something in lorem dipsum or choose something else and then cross-reference it to something here. That makes it another index entry. So let's go back up here. And we'll go to the top here, and we'll say that this particular word, we're going to cross-reference with lorem ipsum. So I select it, same thing, mark entry, etiam. I'm going to do a cross-reference, and it's going to say, well, what do you want it to do? Now, anytime it sees this, down in the index, it's going to say you want to see whatever it is, whatever reference or the cross-reference. So in this case, we could say lorem ipsum. Okay? So now we can go ahead and do that. Now, when I go ahead and mark this, watch what happens. It changes the font. Let me move this right here. Now it says, all right, now we're going to say this is an index entry for etiam, that it, got the little /t for the tab, and it says C lorem ipsum is what it's going to be typed there. Now, what I do is I go ahead and hit close. We'll go ahead and turn off this. Scroll down here, and I'll go down to my index, and hey, wait a minute, where is it? Well, again, if you select this, go to References, and if you come up here, I can update my index. Boom, there it is. Now it says etiam, C lorem ipsum. So that's how we can use cross-referencing to help people find particular pieces of information or point them in the right direction within our documents. Believe you me, whenever you have those long documents, it's going to be great when you're able to create things like a table of contents to help you find the certain things that you're looking for, especially if you're somebody that's just picking up this Word document and going, hey, where in the heck do I find out about the Middle Ages in the history of instruments? Also, if you have figures, if you want to find that picture of Antonio Stradivari, you can do that. We also took a look at the very beginning of how indexing can help us find the places in a document and then link to there at the end and tell people like, hey, you want to talk about this word or this particular thing or format or whatever it is, you can go to this particular page. And then, of course, cross-referencing. Maybe you don't want to specifically put down a page number, but instead you want to reference something else in the index. Cross-references can help you out. Now, in the next Nugget video, we're going to take a look at endnotes, footnotes, and also even talk briefly about the table of authorities. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.